Good afternoon and welcome to the September 10th, 2025 special meeting of the Henrietta Town Board. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Page.
Here.
Councilmember Belanca.
Here.
Councilmember Barley.
Here.
Councilmember Stafford.
Here.
Supervisor Schultz.
Here, we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Fellow board members, I have resolution 16-312, 2025, to request proposals for the operation of the restaurant within the new Riverton Oaks Municipal Golf Course Clubhouse.
Second.
Okay, so a couple things just to be clear with regards to what this is for. We're not going out to bid yet for the construction. We've got preliminary plans, but to me, it makes sense for us to select who is going to be operating this, to make sure before we finalize plans and start construction, to make sure that we've designed it for what I'll call a typical restaurant operation at a clubhouse. But if there are specific needs, it makes more sense to know before we go out to bid who's going to be operating it and to have them take part in the finalization of the plans. The second thing I'll say is I've sent those preliminary plans off, both the architectural plans and the MEP plans, to try to get a firmer estimate of construction costs. Right now, you're looking at between 1 million and 1.5 million ballpark. We have about 1.2 million in available funds. So basically, we would then take a look at, like I said, we get back a better hard cost, and we have another no-go decision to make with regards to this. In terms of the selection, this is not a binding contract that we're absolutely building this, because again, we've made the statement, if it comes in too expensive to build, we're not building it. But like I said, from a order of operations standpoint, it doesn't make sense to then go out and finalize their plan and do all that stuff without knowing who's going to potentially be operating it. There was some questions about, and this is what I was answering your emails, about whether this requires a permissive referendum or not, and Dan can chime in on this. But basically, there were a couple questions in that email. One was, what's the effect on the tax levy? Zero. If we did something where, so let's say that it comes in at the 1.5 and we have the 1.2 and we have the 300,000, we then have to make a decision as to how do you close that gap. One of the possible ways you can do is essentially a mortgage, and the revenue from the operations pays that down. There's a couple different ways to do it.
So we're talking possibly $300,000 between.
I don't even want to necessarily say that, because again, it's between 1 and 1.5. If you look at it's 1.25, we would have to come up with another $5,000 if you look at the average. So I don't know what it's going to be yet, but okay, I'm just giving you some examples of different things. So in addition, there are other funds, capital improvement funds, which we could pull. Those ones would require a permissive referendum. So to go back to the other questions that you had there, building it does not, and again, Dan can correct me if I'm wrong here, building it does not trigger one. Increasing taxes, strangely enough, does not require one. One of the people talk about permissive referendum for the spray park. It was not, if you actually read the permissive referendum, it was not whether to increase taxes or not, because you cannot put that on a ballot referendum. You can't. However, because that one was funded with monies from a type of capital improvement funds that with the use of those funds requires a permissive referendum. Anything that's on a permissive referendum can be made to a ballot referendum. However, that has to be done in July because everything has to be to the Board of Elections before the start of August-ish. But that's how we did it. And if you actually read the referendum, what it says is you were voting on whether we were going to expend the money from the ballot. Now, what we said is, if we do that, we will also increase taxes by $200,000. If we don't expend it, we won't. And the reason I went out to referendum for that one is it was a 50-50 split. When you talk to people, you heard half the people say, yeah, we absolutely want this. You had half the people I spoke to did not want it. It was one of those that I really didn't know whether the majority of the people believed it was for the betterment of the town. And so that's why we put that one up. And again, it wasn't to raise taxes. It was a question of whether we would expend the monies, although in effect.
Well, from the people that have been talking to me and asking questions about this, to me, it seems that it's up in the air as to whether they want it or not, too, for the people I've been speaking with. And the reason why I asked the question about taxes, that's important to us all. And because we did put up the spray pad for the referendum, I thought we were going to do this. I did talk about it and mention it before July because I just felt like maybe the public would want to weigh in on spending this amount of money for a clubhouse. When, clubhouses are things that, they break even. They don't make a lot of money. And we already have some issues with our assessments because we're one of the biggest areas in the United States as far as assessments going up, which is good for us that own homes. But at the same time, it's all about the dollar. So that's
Right,
why I asked those questions.
But those are completely unrelated.
Mm-hmm.
So whether we build a clubhouse will not change what someone's house is assessed at, nor does it increase their the tax levy. In addition, this is generating revenue for the town in the form of rent. So it actually potentially lowers the levy in the future because it's actually generating revenue.
I think that remains to be seen, but we can.
No, this bid is for them to put in what the rent is. There's no to be seen that if let's put it this way, if there isn't rent here, we're not doing this, right? The whole idea here is these people are going to be bidding and saying, this is how much I am willing to pay for rent for that 4,000 square foot space.
So right now you're telling me you're sure this is going to make money for the town?
By
Or is it just
definition.
gonna break even?
So it depends what you're talking
I don't
about
think there's
in
no
terms of, are you talking about on an annual basis or are you talking about, so you've got to separate, there's a difference between capital expenses and operating expenses, right? Do you recognize that?
Yep.
And so what happens is we're expending some capital to build this clubhouse. What will happen, we will get an annual operating revenue from that. Whereas we get no operating revenue from the spray park, we get no operating revenue from the band shell. I don't know that we're getting any additional operating revenue from the expansion of the senior center. We got no operating revenue from the construction of the sewer garage. We get no operating from the all the park stuff we've added. So most of the stuff we spent a lot of money on court, right? We spent a lot more on the court than on this. The library, the rec center is one that actually has operating revenue. Almost everything else we built generates zero operating revenue. This one is different. This one actually generates operating revenue. So that is different than most of our other construction expenses.
Taking that all in consideration, I'm still not sure about how people feel about it. And for me, it would be better if we did have a vote on it for the public to weigh in. That would be better in case something didn't go the right way.
Well, then we're going a year out. And I look at it this way. This country has never been a direct democracy. We don't vote on all the stuff we do.
True.
We didn't vote whether to build the new court, and that was a lot more expensive than this.
Well,
correct me if I'm wrong, that we were paying a lot on rent, overpaying on rent.
Not,
Okay,
not a lot.
okay.
We did save some on rent, but it wasn't an excessive amount. So
What
again, when
questions I have?
you look at the difference, put it this way, Mike, if you want to talk about break-even standpoint, it's a lot of years of rent before the court came down. The court had more to do with that the facility was inadequate, it wasn't safe, there was not good access control. You had the defendants, including those who were essentially coming from the jail, had to go through the court clerk's office. The judges didn't have chambers outside the courtroom. There were a ton of problems with the space. It made a lot of sense to build the courtroom. Not necessarily, again, if you're looking at it from a capital versus operating expense, not necessarily, right? But from everything else, it made a lot of sense, right? A lot of the things, again, we are elected to make those decisions. I get it, in terms of, I don't know. I won't lie. I'm a little frustrated with some of this.
Well, there's no need to be frustrated. I mean, we all have different opinions and we
I
have
understand
different
that.
ways of coming to our conclusions. And this is really a rush kind of thing at this point, trying to get all the answers we need to make an informed decision. I don't have a problem with going out to bid with for a restaurateur to come in and say that they'd be willing to come in. But at the same time, there are other things that I'm concerned about before I make my decision.
So I'm curious how it's been rushed, because we've been talking
Well,
about this. for
how
some
it's
time.
rushed, we got this, we got.
Right, and so we
Last Wed-
extended it a week, right?
We extended a week and here we are. And I mean, and I'll be frank with you. When you say, how's it rushed? Okay, we got it last week just before the meeting.
Yeah.
We did agree to extend it a week. I still think a decision like this, to make a decision in 6 days is kind of rushed. So, but that's me.
Okay. I guess my thing is, this isn't new. We've been
Yeah.
talking about this for probably about a year now. In fact, hold on, if you recall last year, or was it 2 years ago, before we finally closed on the Domino property, we were talking about building a whole new clubhouse because we didn't think we were gonna get the Domino property. So the idea that this is somehow new
This,
it's not accurate.
this is not,
What you got, that the only thing that you got different was then I had to write up a whole new type of RFP, because we've never had an RFP like this, right? And did it take me a little bit longer than I'd hoped? It did. And so again, in response to that, we pushed back the decision from last week to this week. So just to give you time to grasp this does not, so like some of the questions that I've seen in terms of way down in the weeds, we're not making the decision as to whether the back deck is first come, first serve. That has nothing to do with this. This is selecting, going out to bid so that,
well, wouldn't a operator need to know, hey, I got this back deck, but I may not be able to use it if it fills up with golfers before we get there, if it's a shared space,
so again, if you look on the plans, it shows which portion of it is attached, and it talks about that, where it's attached to the stuff, and where are golfers during golf course operation. So to one of those things, this is an important aspect. If the restaurant closes out the operation, so they basically say golfers can't come in, whether to the back deck or to the clubhouse, then it is a taxable property, and they're going to have to pay property taxes on it, because that's one of the things that
public.
that's what it has to support the public use. That's one of the things the state comptroller, Amy Yorsted, shared some of those opinions with us. That there's been a number of these things that they look at, because, as you've done stuff with, so for instance, if you remember, when we first took office, there was talk from the previous administration plan, wanted to have a coffee shop in the library. That does not, that would have been taxable because it in no way supports the operation of the library. And I know the librarians will all say, well, we really need our caffeine. But, you know, when you look at golf courses, like I can't think of a single golf course that doesn't have a clubhouse associated with it, right? We get complaints all the time when people come to the golf course that there isn't food and beverage service at the golf club. And so that is seen as essentially integral to that operation. Just same thing like concessions at sporting events, right? In those rulings, where it was deemed taxable is that one of the restaurants at one of these municipal golf courses, I think it was actually a county course, but they had catering and they would close the clubhouse to the people on the course, and it was only events. That can't happen here. This has to be an open, you know, during the, now, what I don't know is clear is if they're doing that when the golf course isn't open, that I don't know. That's one of those, I would need our attorney to weigh in on that. But certainly while the golfers are out there, it couldn't be closed to the golfers or else it would be considered taxable, and that would greatly increase that cost of operation. So in terms of answering that question, you know, so a lot of that stuff gets in, you know, basically once we do this, like I said, we would bring them in, they would review the plans before this ever, you know, before we'd ever move forward, then there's a lot of stuff that would then happen in parallel, including the negotiation of a lease. The lease is where you get into all those fine details, right? And so, in terms of typically if you, again, you go to a clubhouse and where they do have a back deck and the golfers come up and golf, usually someone comes out and says, can I get you something? And a lot of them will buy drinks and that type of the other stuff. There were questions about like, will people be able to bring their own liquor? Well, actually, again, we shouldn't be allowing that now. Well, because we don't, right. I'm saying because we don't have a liquor license, right? And if this place does have a liquor license, then, you know, that's in violation of New York State liquor law. So that answer is pretty simple and straightforward.
Well, maybe my question should have been, okay, then is the restaurant operator going to be able to sell like beer to the golfers to take out to the course? That
depends on if that golf course, I'm not an expert on this, but as I understand it, because of the special use permits we do for these events, if that golf course is included in their premises, then yes, they can. They have to have that in their liquor license. But again, that's not really in here because you're starting to get down into the bigger details.
And you know, when you were addressing Rob's thing about it being rushed, yes, we've heard a lot about it, but we never saw any specifics until last night.
And that's fine. I will also point out you didn't see any specifics on the bid documents for the municipal dog shelter until less than a week before you had to vote on that. We didn't see the specifics on the again, the court building, a lot of those things, those bid documents, it's typically, you see the actual bid document itself, but about a week out.
Unlike the courthouse, unlike the dog shelter, unlike the spray park, that's operated by the town. This is not operated by the town. This is going to be operated by a private entity.
We are operating
private entity, and that's where I have, you know.
Right, we are operating a third of this. 2,000 of the 6,000 square feet we are operating. 4,000 of the 6,000 square feet they are operating.
So to put to bed this permissive referendum, the question I had way before we got to this point, that was really never addressed in full, in dealing, in hearing what you're saying, and what the attorney said in the past, this could have been passed as a referendum if we
I
did
don't-
it in July.
No,
It could have been?
no, there is nothing, Dan, is there anything in here that triggers a permissive referendum?
There is nothing at this time.
We can barely hear you. I
I heard him say,
You
I
said
think I heard him say there's nothing at this point, but we can
Correct.
get him to raise his mic up a little
Yep.
bit.
I'm trying.
Can we raise it?
I'm trying to do that. It's not,
Okay, we can hear you a little bit
Talking
better.
Closer, maybe.
yeah, so there's nothing at this time that would trigger a permissive referendum. We don't know, I mean, all this is at this time is requesting proposals to operate the restaurant. The referendum would only come into play when we're at a point where we're building the clubhouse, and then only depending on the source of the funds and matters like that. So there's nothing at this point to put forth in a referendum.
Right.
Okay, thank you for that answer. So I guess if the spread between the money we have and what it would cost after estimate, it could trigger it. Is that what you're saying?
Source of funds.
Okay,
If depending on where those funds come from, there are certain capital funds that require a permissive referendum to use funds from that, to use dollars from that fund.
Correct. If it's coming from a capital reserve fund, that would trigger a permissive referendum.
all right, thank you, Dan.
And Dan, if we put this out there, and, the bid out there and people bid on it, and we find something in there that we want changed, I mean, can they hold that against us? Or, I mean, that's going to be that comes down to the exact lease. Like, and I'll just give an example. We had, if the operator caused significant damage, he would be responsible for it. Well, I kind of consider, if any of them, the operator or their customers, and significant damage in my business is considered a weasel word, because what's significant to you might be not significant to me. So if that went out like this and then we changed it in their actual lease,
I mean,
what happens then? And I mean, that's just one example. I mean, I had questions about if we were responsible for replacing the equipment in there. That's a whole nother thing. I mean, if we're getting, let's say we get $3,000 a month rent or $5,000 a month rent from these folks, and then all of a sudden their commercial refrigerator goes, it appeared that we'd be responsible to replace it. And I'm not about to pay, in 10 years to replace somebody else's refrigerator.
Can I ask you a question? Because you rent to your building, right?
What's that?
You rent your building, right?
No.
Oh, you own your building?
Yeah.
Okay.
We own my.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
can't answer, but
Yes.
let's put it this way. I think you're familiar with rent, right? What happens when the HVAC goes? Does the renter pay it or the landlord?
In most cases, I would say the landlord.
Yeah,
I would say in most cases, same thing with the hot water heater. But
right.
in a restaurant, I do not believe that most restaurants, they take care of, if the commercial stove needs to replace, the landlord's replacing that.
So again, when you look at the type of stuff that we were talking about, it's the major built-ins, like the built-in freezer, that's really part of the building. There's a difference between stuff that is real property. When it's built into the building, it becomes part of the property. That's the responsibility of the landlord. The stuff that is not part of the property, that is the responsibility of the tenant. Now, what we've said is a lot of times restaurants we'll call pre-furnished, right? We have a bunch of equipment and we listed in there that equipment that we have. Now that's as is, right? But there's certain things that we're going to build into the hood the walk-in freezer, the walk-in cooler and the keg cooler. Those are built into the building. When the tenant's done, the tenant can't take that with them. It is part of the building. The stuff that becomes part of that real property, it's our responsibility unless was damaged or hurt, destroyed by their actions. If it's just normal wear and tear, it's our responsibility, just like the hot water tank, the air conditioner, the heater, that's that stuff. If they've got a specific pizza oven, that's on them. If they've got a specific deep fryer, that's on them.
But
As a general rule-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Dan.
As a general rule, a commercial lease is distinguished from a residential lease in terms of who's responsible for repairs for things such as HVAC. In a commercial lease, traditionally, the tenant is responsible for those types of repairs. In a residential lease, the landlord is responsible for those.
What about this scenario though, where that same HVAC is also our portion of the building?
Yeah, anything is negotiable. I'm just saying that as a general rule, unless there's a specific clause in the lease to cover that type of thing, the tenant is responsible in the commercial situation. But anything's negotiable on those items.
And so, I mean, plain and simple, what's gonna happen, the more responsibility for those repairs you put on the tenant, the lower the rent's gonna be. The less responsibility on them, the higher the rent's gonna be. So if we wanna shift that, I thought with the stuff that's built into the building, that's typically ours, because they can't take that away with them. Right? If I was a tenant, I'd have a huge problem. I just replaced your HVAC and now, 6 months from now, you say, oh, my lease is over. That's not a good situation,
So-
right?
So I do know that there's a big printer in town, big printing company in town, that they rent the building. They are responsible for like the air conditioners. They're responsible for that, but it's not a restaurant. So
But I will also say that, as you know, printers put a lot of stuff in the air that can clog those
Oh.
HVAC units.
Oh, yeah.
They see a lot of wear and tear.
So I did, and just you did say it, and I appreciate your response on all these. We had to word some of a couple of things to change it.
Right.
From owner to.
Yep. Yeah, there were a couple places where I did have it because again, some of it, when you looked at all of our RFPs are typically going the other way, right?
Right.
We're buying stuff from them.
Yep.
And so,
I understood why
Yeah.
how it got flip-flopped. So once again, how about the question about who's, damages? Obviously, they're responsible for damages.
Correct.
I certainly didn't like significant because of that. What you consider significant.
well, so again, in the lease, we would define that. And as far as, so going back to your original question in terms of it, so there's a couple things on here. One, we can reject any and all bids. We don't have, if we get back all the responses and we don't like any of the responses, you can reject them all, go back out to bid. Or maybe not go back out to bid and not do this project. So the second thing is, it has in here, if we haven't, I think I gave 60 days, because government doesn't move super fast. If we fail to get to a lease in 60 days, it's thrown out and we start over again. So that way, going back to these things, if we get to some of them and we say, well, this is, here's what we think is significant. And they say, well, no, we think this is, if they're not happy with that, or we're not happy with it, whichever, there's a way to say, okay, we're not to an agreement. You can't, we couldn't, to try to create a lease here, again, we also don't know necessarily the exact nature of the restaurant that's coming in. Some are more bars, some are more restaurants, some have, there's different types. This goes back to why, like, one of the things, we don't have minimums here, right? We basically say, you guys want some amount of upfront money, because you want the operator to have skin in the game, right? And then basically, and then there's rents. And so one of the things that comes in, rather than dictate a minimum, let's look at it. And then if we decide, you know what, none of them have enough skin in the game, we can reject them all and say that. It's,
And
I don't know.
the other thing I question, we kind of talked about the lease a little bit here. The person that, the folks that helped you out with the floor plan, did they mention anything about how their rent works at one of their establishments?
I did not want to get into that question because I did not want to
Okay, fair enough.
taint the process.
Fair enough.
We were specifically just in terms of like getting ideas on how big prep stations needed to be, how big kitchen areas needed to be, how big bar areas needed to be to be able to do a typical menu you see at a restaurant, a clubhouse. Yeah, I did not want to get into any of those questions.
Yeah, okay,
because
that's I understand. I mean,
yeah,
I agree with
I did talk to a couple landlords as far as, and again, the issue with the landlords is you have very different scenarios. As when it's the outbuilding, it's typically a ground lease. When it's inside a plaza, there's two different ways they do it. One is they just give them an empty shell, and the tenant is responsible for all the build out. Now, one of the things you find is with the chains, that's typically what the chains want to do. They want to build it their way. When you get to what I'll call the mom and pop, they typically want to see stuff much further along and rent the space more furnished. Again, this is what I was getting from folks who rent to, who are landlords for restaurants. So it is a broad range. We certainly aren't the land lease type. This is more of the integrated. We want to kind of one building that's both the pro shop and restaurant, kind of just a much better version of what's there today.
the landlord I talked to, and I told you about him before, he just called the vanilla shell. You have your walls up, and how much you want to give us for it, and
Right.
rent how much you want to rent it for, and that's it. And he has, that person has to, if they want to decorate decorate the bathrooms different or different fixtures, that's on them. If they want, the bars on them, the stoves and everything else is on
Right.
the tenant, not on the landlord.
Okay, so the other stuff we have to answer with this is with regards to the best value. We had currently 4 factors. I don't know if there was a desire to add any additional factor. And there was questions raised as to what those percentages will be. And so again, if you look at the bid form has spaces for 4 entries. The upfront cost or upfront payment, whatever you want to call it. That's their quote unquote skin in the game, as you guys have been talking about. And then there was a year 1 rent, year 2 rent, and year 3 rent. It was kind of assumed it's a minimum of a 3-year rent with the ability to extend. One of the things we talked about with the lease, the idea is that, again, typically if you're going to be putting a bunch of money in, you don't want to say then at the end of the 3 years, do I go back out to bid? The idea is it continues to renew unless either party. So if we don't live up to our obligation, it's an out for the restaurateur. If the restaurateur doesn't live up to their ends of the obligation of the lease, it's an out for us to go out and bring in someone else. But typically, again, if you're making an investment in this, you don't want to be able to, after a few years, I've built up this business, I've got this great clientele, and now you kick me out and bring someone else in. That's not fair to them. So the idea is, again, it's essentially auto renew lease with the idea that there would be outs if for lack of performance. But in terms of the way we were talking about doing the best value, again, the way we've typically always done the best value, if we're buying stuff and let's say we're basing off of the quality of the equipment we might, or the experience of the operator, we would assign some percentage to experience, some percentage to the quality. We would rate those, and then those numbers would, in the case where we're buying stuff and you're typically going with the lowest value, the higher the score, it would adjust their comparative value down. So I guess one way to look at it, it's not changing what they're offering to pay. It's when I'm now comparing, bid A with bid B, rather than compare the straight dollars, then I have the ability to say, you know what, because we want someone with some significant experience, restaurant operation experience, right? So if I had two bids that were the exact same dollar amount, one was from somebody who's been in the restaurant business for 20 years, one's from someone who's been in the restaurant business for 2 years, and maybe a third one's from someone who's never been in the restaurant business before, it's pretty obvious which one we want to take, right? Including in that order, we want to take the one with the most experience because they're most likely to succeed. And then, we've also talked about the other stuff we looked at is that we were more interested in someone who's a Henrietta-based business, whether that means they currently operate a restaurant in Henrietta or they themselves are Henrietta residents. We also talked about that they are an independent restaurant operator. We were interested in an independent as opposed to a chain. I don't know that a chain would want to come in here, but essentially that's some of the stuff we looked at. And then the last one we looked at, again, we had reached out to the three major, I'll call them the three major bar restaurant operators at the time when we were starting this project. And only one of those three gave us, assistance when we were putting the initial design together. To me, there should be some, I can't call it compensation, but there was some reflecting of that. And one of the ideas is to assign some percentage to that. And there was pushback on what the initial number is. So again, it sounded like the majority of the board agreed there should be some, but that maybe the initial number was too high. And so those are the four factors we currently have. I don't know, does anybody have an idea, thoughts on a fifth factor, or are those?
I got to back up to the rent. When we're talking about the rent and three-year term or 3-year lease, I have no problem with that. I actually think somebody in the restaurant might even want longer if they put up. So, but with that being said, you said automatic renew if everybody's living up to their.
Yeah.
Well, when we see automatic renew, does that we can increase the rent?
Yeah. So the last thing that was on there was an escalation clause.
Okay, and I want to make sure that escalation clause isn't just for like I want to make sure that, a lot of times the escalation cost is for like, hey, we got to pay more for heating, or we got to pay more for cleaning or things like that.
No, so those are typically, those rents are triple net. So you're going to pay for, in other words, as the utility costs go, that's on top of. So it's not included in that base rent typically with triple net. And that also includes CAM charges, which is common area maintenance. It includes property taxes, although again, if this follows the rules from my reading, and we'll get a final ruling from Dan, that's our belief is that, or my belief is that, as long as, again, they don't that it's available for the public use of the golf course, that it would be considered, it would come under the non-taxable status of the town.
You might be running into another situation there where the golf course closes and the restaurant stays open. Then the nexus between playing golf and the people that are eating there could change that a little bit, but.
Yeah, that's the big question that I didn't see in either of those opinions that was addressed. Although, again, when you kind of read that, they talk about how this is different than other golf course operations. That kind of implies to me that other golf course operations do remain non-taxable on the municipal property.
Okay.
What the big question that I didn't see is exactly that point. Although in New York State, that's got to be, I don't know any golf courses that you play golf year round. Right. So I'm assuming that's addressed. Now, maybe that they're saying is if the restaurant is only open when the golf course is open, that I don't know that they do that either. So I didn't see a ruling that addressed that question. Is basically, obviously during the winter, you're certainly not turning away golfers because there's no golfers coming in.
Well, there are a lot of golf courses where the restaurant stays open all year.
Right. Oh, I know that. Yeah, I get that. I'm just saying, I just don't know how that impacts. And Amy, had you seen any ruling that addressed that particular subject? Yeah. We had not found one that addressed that particular subject. And so going back to the lease stuff, right? So we're working on the assumption right now, from what we can tell, that there is not going to be that the property tax involved in that, right? If someone bids based on that stuff and we're getting to negotiating the lease and the state comptroller rules that they do owe that, and then the operator comes to us and says, this isn't what we bid on, that gets back to, well, that's when you negotiate that in the lease. The thing is, what's important is that everyone is bidding on an equal basis, right? The point is, someone can't come back in later and say, well, I bid that, but I want to lower this. There has to be a hard reason, like one of the assumptions that's in here turns out to not be true, right? That type of stuff. But you can't, this gets into, you typically see this on the other side, right? It's usually referred to as change orders, right? When I'm bidding on construction, they say, well, here's everything. And then you start to go do stuff, they say, oh, well, that's a change order, that's a change order. No, that's what you bid, right? We ran into this problem with someone who they bid really low to get the contract and then kept trying to change order everything. And we said, no, you can't do that. Well, I'm not making much money on this. Well, you got the contract because you bid low. That's your problem, right? If it's a change we made, we absolutely paid the difference, but not just because they bid low and they think it should be higher.
So I take it that your answer is yes, that 3 years from now, we can charge more for rent, base rent,
Every year you could.
base rent.
The idea, yes, at some point, again, I can't tell you that the other thing you're going to want, though, from an operator, is I don't want the town to be able to say in year 4, rent's doubling.
Well, your lease is gonna say it goes up by a certain amount.
That's the
for first
escalation
3
number.
years that you're there, and then after that, it's a new lease. Right?
The lease starts all,
Starts
no,
all
but
over again.
But under this, the way I understood it was the lease continued unless somebody wasn't living up to it.
Right.
So that's where I'm concerned that all of a sudden, let's say restaurant space in this area triples in 10 years. Well, we obviously shouldn't be charging 2026 prices if it's 2036.
Well, they wouldn't be 2026 prices because, again,
Well,
there's
right.
the escalation.
I'm talking base rent, base bill.
So to go back to that, right, I don't know how you again, you don't want to build a lease that no one's going to want to enter into, right? Do you agree?
Yeah.
Right. So if there is no if basically in year 4, I can negotiate, say, you know what, we're going to this amount, right? That there isn't any kind of, I get what you're saying, you know, again, from the cost of operation, most of those are outside that triple net, right? That the cost of the common area maintenance, the cost of, like I said, now we don't necessarily have taxes, but cost of utility, stuff like that. Where you're, in terms of the hard rent, I don't know how you put that in a contract that works for both sides.
Well, I mean, usually the way I understand it, usually put it, there's a term limit on the lease, and so your lease ends on.
So, but you also
2000
just said that you didn't think that a restaurateur would want 3 years. So what do you think that?
Oh, I think the restaurant would probably want at least 5 years. I believe
Okay.
the restaurant, somebody, if they're putting upfront money, skin in the game, they're gonna
Right.
want more than 3 years even, I believe. The one, you know, that's my,
So then one of the things, do we maybe put that it can be renewed with that escalation clause some 2 times, maybe 3 times? Or 2 times would be total of 9 years?
when we talk about an escalation cost, I always think of that as like the CAM cost, as things go up.
No, escalation basically means the rent goes up every year.
It goes every year.
I just wanted,
And after your
The way
lease
I
is
read it.
over, you can renegotiate what the
Yeah,
rent is and what the
Right.
escalation costs.
My understanding
New
was,
contract.
let's say if it was a 3-year lease, we would determine that it would be 5% every year for 3 years or 15% higher in the 3rd year. And then the lease is over and we start all over again.
and then,
Right, but
Just like if you rent an apartment, you don't have any say how much they're gonna
Right.
charge. Once your lease is up on the apartment in 3 years, they can come up with whatever rent they want. And you either take it or move.
Right.
but I consider like the CAM costs are gonna go up, you know.
I don't-
Right, but that's not,
But
that's
it's separate,
separate, that
that's-
is separate.
What would
Okay.
the term?
Those are passed through.
what
just
was
to be
it?
clear.
What was it?
CAM, common area maintenance.
Okay. All right. So,
So we could do, then what we could do is basically that if we want, we can make it, if it's, we can put that it auto renews each year up to a maximum, we can put a maximum numbers.
yeah.
That's fine.
So I'm not familiar, and again, I've never ran a restaurant or owned property to rent, but I'm not, I don't know anything, this skin in the game cost to me feels uncomfortable. To me, I thought that we would build a restaurant area based on the preliminary work of how many tables you can serve. That would sort of drive the size of the stove, the size of the dishwasher, the size of the steam table, and whatever. I don't know if we would purchase the stove, and if they wanted a bigger one, they would have it themselves, but can they take it
Right.
when it's over? But I was really comfortable with 1 year's lease in advance, and then the basic kitchen area and bar with the cooler and the things you need to have, the hood and the fire protection and the security system and all that stuff. And then, what if we have an Asian or a Nepali owner wants to come in? They may need a whole different way to cook the food. So
Right.
it's a hard, maybe a pizza. What if a pizza place came in? They're going to need those big pizza stoves. So to me, that was the only gray area was you build a kitchen based on how many tables you're serving. They know how fast it turns over. We know how long it's going to be on and all that kind of thing. But then the negotiations and the contract would be, what do they put in
Right.
versus what, and do they get to keep it when they leave, like the dishes and the chairs and the tables and all that stuff. But I was comfortable with,
So Rick, just to answer your question, that is how we did it. We looked at and said, this is the space we've got. This is how many tables you can comfortably fit in there. So our architects drew that up. And then we basically said, okay, if I'm doing this, and we just went with what I'm going to call a traditional clubhouse menu. So that's typically sandwiches, burgers, fries. We did have an area for pizza. This isn't a place that would be delivering pizzas. So we don't have multiple pizza ovens, but the idea is it has one pizza oven. you know, or an area where a pizza oven can go, I guess is a better way to put it. And then the idea is we have some pieces of equipment today. So some of the stuff is going to be built as brand new because it's essentially built into the building. Like I said, the walk-in freezers, those really are kind of built into the building. But then there are a bunch of equipment we have both from the old clubhouse as well as we got some from the county, and we've got that stored. We've got the old dishwasher from the senior center because we got an upgraded dishwasher. So we have a bunch of that equipment. So we were throwing that in again to help with to your point, to make it, especially if we're talking a mom and pop shop, they typically don't have the big corporate purses that these chains do, right? And so the more we can do to make that easier for them to get in, the better, in my opinion. We're going to get a better response. We're going to get more. Now, with that said, I don't disagree that you don't want somebody who comes in with no investment and therefore is more likely to just cut and run because they don't have any skin in the game. So I get that argument. Typically, again, the stuff that isn't part of the building, so the tables, that's theirs. The place settings, that's theirs. The special equipment, that's theirs, right? But the stuff that, you know, they're free to use the stuff, and I specifically listed what we currently have. Now, again, some of it's the built-in stuff will be new. The other stuff is used, and it's essentially as is. Is it in working condition? Yes. Can some of it use, especially the stuff from the old clubhouse? Can it use a thorough cleaning? Absolutely. In fact, I've suggested we take it to our yard and power wash it. You know, but like the dishwasher is in great condition. The thing is, from a capacity, when you look at, right, the difference there is the senior center is essentially a banquet hall. They have lunch, they have all this stuff that has to be washed all at once. We have a ton of people. That's not typical of what this restaurant is. This is not a banquet restaurant. So they don't need the larger capacity of our senior center. The other thing that's happened, of course, with the senior center is our senior population has grown. Their meals have grown. Oh, by the way, we're about to expand the restaurant area by probably about 70%. So so we needed a bigger dishwasher. We kept the old one so we can put it in here. And when you look at it from its capacity for a restaurant of this size, it's actually well suited.
I just didn't want to make the upfront cost so significant that we don't get anybody.
And I agree with you there.
So Rick, just so you know, I talked to a landlord, you know, a building in a nearby town. I won't say where, and he just leased his building out, and the new restaurant operator owner, we'll call him, put $400,000 into the building, and that included like a new bar. He wanted the bathrooms different, so he made the bathrooms a lot fancier. He put his own he put his own kitchen in. So they put about $400,000 into it. I'm pretty sure he told me it was a 5-year lease. But
yeah, so some people can't do that.
Right. So, I mean, it's not.
Right.
I think it's crazy to put $400,000 or $500,000 into somebody else's building, but this restaurant owner did.
Yeah. So again, you know, it's less likely here because the bathrooms are in the common area. That way they're used by both restaurant patrons and the pro shop patrons. Those are going to be brand new. They're going to be specific to, I suspect, right, that particular restaurant was probably going for a particular clientele. And yeah, you know, as you start to look at it in some of them, you know, I go into some of these restaurants that are trying to be, I'll call upscale, and boy, the fixtures they have in the restaurant are something else. You know, again, ours is going to have, it's going to be a brand new building. So I don't know that if they want to, they certainly can make improvements to that stuff, but I don't know how much improvements will need to be made. The finish on inside the restaurant, they're going to want to put some finish up. I doubt they're just going to want plain white walls, but again, that's up to them. The tables, obviously there'll be some built-ins for some. If you look at the current design, there does call for some booths. Those are built in. So again, those stay real property because you can't take them when you leave. But like I said, the tables, the place settings, the glassware, all that stuff, that's all on them.
But at the same time, if an owner operator wants to come in and put $200,000 or $300,000 in to make it the style that he wants, that's perfectly
We're
acceptable.
okay, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I really think that we should have a minimum of what someone puts down on this, to have skin in the game.
You need
There's
more than a
actually
year.
a difference between owning and being a tenant. And I think that really speaks to longevity of them wanting to be in the clubhouse and do business there. And I don't think saying $25,000 putting up is a lot of money. It's not. Also, as far as repairs, if something goes wrong in the place and they got to fix it, that's a part of doing business. That's what bars do. That's what beauty shops do. It's the way you operate when you're a sole proprietor.
So again, on the minimum, I'll just point out, if we don't feel, rather than publish a minimum, because one of the things, as soon as you put that in there, you've kind of set your target, right? You can, if a bid comes back with not enough minimum, you can reject it.
So you're going to give them an option to put money up front or not.
It has that right in there.
So
They have to have some up front.
So-
There isn't really an or not.
Right.
Now, I will also say, but let me put it this way, Rob, and I'm just gonna make numbers up to exaggerate, right? Somebody puts $50,000 up and is offering $2,000 a year for rent, and I'm exaggerating, right? Versus somebody who's gonna put wants to put $10,000 up, but wants to pay $50,000 a year, right? Which one are we gonna take? So this is my point. I'd rather not put the minimums because simply put, the more you put up front, the less I'm typically going to afford, because especially going back to what
I
someone
agree with
said,
you.
if I'm putting a bunch of money up front, I'm probably taking out a bank loan. I now have to pay that bank off. Guess where that's coming from? What I have available to pay in rent. So I'd rather put it down and let us decide. Hey, this one, it states very clearly that we get to reject any bids if we believe it is in the best interest of the town. So if we get a bunch of responses back and one of them is, you know what, we're just not comfortable, we think that bid is too low, we are allowed to reject it.
I agree with you. I just didn't want someone to come in, not put anything down, come in and fail, and then we're back to square one again. That makes
I get it. I don't think, I'd be surprised if they all came back with $0 upfront.
So there's two other things. One, we have a date of September 22nd for Visit BN. We're down to 12 days.
No, that's
We're gonna adjust that.
that was the old, yeah, that's
Okay.
already been adjusted.
right.
We were talking about doing it it would be the 30th.
Yeah.
So that
okay.
way we could do the bid selection on the same, we have that special meeting for the other bid selection on
Gotcha.
for the band shell. Thank you,
Okay.
Becky.
And then the point system, I still don't agree with giving someone an extra point or two because they help with the design of this. They should have done that because it's their heart. And I think that no one that didn't get called, anyone that didn't get called to participate or didn't know about it is at a disadvantage.
Right. Well, I will also say that anyone who's not Henrietta Base is at a disadvantage. Anyone who's not an independent restaurant operator is at a disadvantage.
Just my opinion.
I understand. I'm giving you my counter opinion. So. Okay,
Two more questions, please.
okay.
One,
That's for this being a fast meeting.
when do you think we'll vote on the cost of the building? When do you think we'll have a number for the cost of the building?
So I've asked them, I sent them the preliminary designs. I've asked for them to have the information back to me by the end of the month.
Okay.
So that way, because then, that will give us some ballpark, and then the other advantage then, I want to have some feel for, okay, if the people come in and say, well, I want this change, this change, this change, what's that going to do to the cost of the building? Right. Because then at that point we can say, well, if this is a significant change, okay, we're willing to put that in, but you're gonna have to pick up that difference.
And to be clear, we will be voting on that. Too.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then once we get this, before a lease is signed, this board will be
Correct. So,
voting on that.
yeah, I can't sign a lease without you guys
Okay.
authorizing me to do such. We
I-
can't go out to bid for the construction without
Okay.
your guys' approval to do that. And again, what we've said is we're gonna have that initial cost back before we even bother to go out to bid. Then when we get the bid back, same thing, if the construction comes back in way over what we thought, because, maybe the tariffs have a significant impact, right? You don't have to accept any of those bids. If we don't, obviously, this is all contingent. This lease is all contingent on us having a clubhouse. If we never build the clubhouse, I won't say we've wasted time, but we've essentially wasted their time. But, everybody coming in, I think, understands that no clubhouse, no restaurant operation,
No new clubhouse.
no new clubhouse, I should say, yeah. And no one wants to operate that current clubhouse.
And maybe I will ask one more.
Okay,
Any more thought about just a land lease and then leasing back our portion of that house and they build the place?
that gets really tough to do, especially since, oh, by the way, some of it is parkland.
Is there any idea or interest? I had, one of the questions was, since we purchased this, is it all parkland now, or is just the original
So,
golf course, the line that was drawn originally?
so technically, the original was parkland, and a previous town board violated parkland alienation by selling it to the Domino family. When you look at the original Riverton court, by us buying it back, arguably, at any time, the federal government could have come in and say, give us back the, whatever it is, $4 to $6 million we gave you to build that.
So is that another way of you saying we should make sure we determine the whole thing is now parkland?
I think it already is parkland.
Well, I think.
I think we should treat it that way.
Yeah.
So that's how we've been treating it. So like, we just had a request, for instance, for a utility company to come through, and basically one of the things on that is that can only happen, either they have to go through parkland alienation or they have to service the park.
Mhm.
And so oh, by the way, that's gonna get us free internet access. But
I was just wondering.
right, yeah, so no, as far as I'm concerned, I'm treating, now obviously there's some weirdness to this because during that time it was in the Domino family, they sold the tower. Not much we can do about that. But I think, like I said, as far as I'm concerned, we've got to treat this like it's parkland.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so the decision points we have to make. I'm going to start with the first one, and it's not exactly modifying the resolution, but it's modifying this. I'm just going to do a vote. I don't know what form that takes, but let's just so I'm going to ask for numbers, and then if we kind of coalesced on a number, we'll vote to officially make that term. So what do we want to make as the maximum length of this lease? I've heard 5 years, 6 years. Those are really the two most prominent numbers I heard.
5 years from anybody else.
What's that?
Do we have any comments from the audience or anybody online?
That's up to us as to whether we take those, but
I didn't.
it's not technically a public hearing, but
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
so the problem is, I'm not sure if some of the folks in the audience are potential people who are going to bid. I don't want their opinions. I want their opinions as part of the bid. I don't want to pollute the bid process by getting their opinions in the construction of this
Point taken.
thing. So I heard Joe threw out 5 years.
5 years as a max is
5
It's
years.
fine with me.
Okay, so
It can be 3 years though.
I make a motion that we set the maximum length of this lease at 5 years.
Second.
Any further discussion on that? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Page.
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca.
Aye.
Councilmember Barley.
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. So we'll have a 5-year term. So it'll auto renew up to 5 years. There was,
Should we put 5 years with an escalation clause or
it
just?
does, it has an escalation clause in
All
it,
right,
yeah.
thank
Build out, I'm gonna get to the best value stuff. Thought there was one other start a lease. Oh, responsibility of, repairs of major, so as Dan pointed out, that often in some commercial leases, the tenant is responsible. I have a problem with the HVAC since it serves both sides, but we could get into the question of like the hood, the coolers,
Anything-
as to whether that's right. What are we gonna put down that is the responsibility of the tenant to repair versus the owner to repair?
How about anything that's exclusively used by them? We don't use the cooler, we don't use the stove, we
You
use
guys-
the air conditioning, we use the
The hot
water
water,
tank.
yep. No, that's a decent separation. What do you guys think?
I agree with that.
Fine.
Everyone good with that? Okay. I make a motion. Let me go back to this. I just want to see where it is. Right,
So if the roof goes, what happens? It's gotta be replaced.
the roof?
Yep.
Roof is us. It's our
Mhm.
building.
Yeah, that's pretty common.
So you're also saying the heating also would be our
The
responsibility?
HVAC is ours. Because again, that's common to the whole building by this this separation.
So I think.
But the coolers, the hood, any of the kitchen equipment, all that stuff that's exclusively them, that would be the responsibility of the operator. So this is under, so I'm gonna make a motion and we can further discuss this, Rob. I'm gonna make a motion that we adjust the additional terms under section 3 of the instruction to bidders to note that the equipment in common is the responsibility of the owner, and that the responsibility of the maintenance of the appliances exclusively used by the restaurant is the responsibility of the operator.
One other thing, is the restaurant gonna have its own electric meter and gas meter?
We are talking about metering it separately, but I currently have a motion on the table. Is anyone going to second?
Second.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No problem. So this largely changes 3.16. So there was that however essentially goes away if you read the thing. So basically 3.15 says is solely responsible for the maintenance and repairs of all major building systems such as water, electric, HVAC, fire control, and the like. And then 3.16, I'm sorry, that was 3.15. 3.16 would say the operator is responsible for the maintenance and repair of kitchen appliances. I'm going to say built-ins and all restaurant specific equipment and items. And I'll work with Dan to finish wordsmithing that. But again, these are kind of the basis for the lease. The actual wordsmithing in the lease will be a bit different, but Okay, so that's what's currently as motioned. Any other comments on that in terms of changing that? So like I said, this is under additional terms. 3, it's cleaning and maintenance. It used to say operator is responsible for maintenance, repair of kitchens and appliance. However, the owner is responsible for the replacement of the major that have reached their end of useful life, the ones that, and that was supposed to be the ones that we did the building. We're just gonna get rid of that. The operator is responsible for the maintenance and repair of kitchen appliances, built-ins, and all restaurant-specific equipment and items.
I mean, exclude anything exclusively used by them. Yeah, yeah, that's it.
The cleaning and all that stuff too as well. They're responsible for that.
That was already in there. Yeah.
That's it.
Okay, any further discussion on that? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Rick, so to answer your question, in 3.2, it says
Yeah.
we'll bring in all the utilities, but the restaurant will be separately metered from the rest of the clubhouse, and the operator will be responsible for their utility payments. Okay, were there any other changes in terms other than, again, the best value determination?
So at 3.3, it says that we'll supply all the kitchen appliances, all the major kitchen appliances.
So we can change that wording because it's specifically, where does it say all? It doesn't say all, will provide major kitchen appliances, whether new or used. I'll insert the following. And I'll just get rid of the current plans. I'll say, provide the following. So again, these are ones, a lot of the cooktops, the pizza oven, the double gas fryer, those are things that we currently own. When we build the building, we would build in the walk-in cooler, walk-in freezer, and walk-in keg. That should be keg cooler, not freezer.
Tell you what,
Ice beer.
I've been on a lot of keg coolers. It's an awful big one. They're gonna be able to fill a lot of kegs. One of my previous jobs. So.
I'm gonna scratch 3.9 then.
Prep table.
Prep tables. Yeah. 'Cause we don't. I thought we were getting that, but it turns out we didn't. So I'm gonna scratch that one. We got that one. Actually, I'm gonna put a pause on 3.7.
Some of that stuff is used, right? So
Yeah, so I'll mark which stuff is used. The 3.7 is dependent on us on the bricks grant.
okay,
There's an extra deep fryer at the Dome.
got it.
So I'll mark which, so basically, just so you guys know, 1, 2, 3 would be new. 4, kitchen was new. 5, 6, 7, and 8 are all used, and what's currently 10 would be new.
Go through it again. I missed some of it.
Okay, so walk-in cooler, new, walk-in freezer, new, walk-in keg cooler, new. And then the keg tap system would be new.
Okay.
Oh, and the hood and fire suppression system would be new, because that's, again, built
Right.
into the building. Can't get a CVO without it. The other stuff, the cooktops, the gas grill top, the gas flat top, the gas oven with cooktop, pizza oven, and the deep fryer and dishwasher, those are all used.
So if they want to upgrade those things, we'll go.
They're free to,
do what they want to do with it.
we don't even have to negotiate.
Right.
They can just bring in their own.
Good,
And
okay,
then we just decide, do we just surplus these?
Right.
Like I said, these we have currently,
Right.
they're not being used by the town, but we own them.
right.
So, yeah, they may look at them and say, I don't want them.
Right.
One of the things that I don't remember if I just realized, I think examination of the site. Yeah, so one of the things I want to make sure that I talk about, that they can come in and look at those units. Might want to mention that they wear anyone who goes into that kitchen will see why we're not reusing the existing club.
I went in there.
All right. So I think that's it, other than now we gotta get to the best value. And this is likely to be the most competitive. Start with the one that I think everyone agrees that there should be significant restaurant operation experience.
Yep.
We'd originally had a number of 10%. Does that work?
Sure.
So the idea is, no experience would be 0. And then what do we consider significant? 10 years? 10 years or more?
Should we success,
I will
significantly successful or?
I will tell you, as someone who's started a couple businesses and someone, and I can even go all the way back to my junior achievement days, I learned more from the year we failed than I did from the years we succeeded. Knowing what not to do is often more important than knowing what to do. It just gets tough to then quantify and qualify. Do we want to just do it for, it's the number of years experience up to 10? Was that the easiest way to do it?
So if I got 5 years experience, well, how many
I
points?
would get
get?
5%. It's not points, it's a
Okay,
percent. I get 5%.
Okay.
So my bid number is increased by 5% for comparison purposes. Does that work?
Yeah. So if someone has experience and they haven't been in business for a while, they're coming back, do they get any points at all?
If they have experience, but they haven't operated in the past 10 years, but they had 5 years before that, they would get 5%.
Well, let me ask you, and what do we consider experience? Do you own it, or do you have to be the boss there?
To me, it should be operation, right?
Server.
Well, I don't think that's
Right.
server. To me, that is owner, manager,
Excuse me.
something like that. It's the operation. It's not just
Working at.
working at it.
I just want to.
Do we all agree with that?
That's fine.
Okay. And it's going to be essentially number of years maxing at 10. Okay. Henrietta-based business. Originally we actually had 5.
That in just my thought here. that
And just in case you didn't hear, Joe had suggested 10, but originally we had 5.
The issue I have with that is that, you could have somebody that's a very good business owner and good restaurant here, and he loses out because it's so high.
Because he's not Henrietta. No, I
And
get it.
the other thing is, if I don't know if somebody might be leery if they already have a business here. I'm not gonna open another restaurant in my own backyard. You know, so I would,
The thing I will say, one of the things you can also do, the way we've done these in the past, is we have allowed you to. So one of the things we could basically say is, in addition, and the way we've done these in the past, they can go negative. So for instance, we could say if they're an out-of-state operator, it's -5 points. If they're, or something like that. And this is, if you remember when we did our RFP for the streetlights, we did that. We wanted a local operator. We didn't want somebody from out of state because they wouldn't know all the New York State rules and regulations. They wouldn't know, we also didn't want to have to, we wanted someone local, gave additional points for local because we wanted them to be able to respond quickly, stuff like that. So we could have, 5% for Henrietta, some percent, lesser percent if I'm outside of Henrietta, but in Monroe County, and then either lesser number or even start to go negative if I'm outside Monroe County.
Joe recommended operator resident to be the top one.
I would be willing to maybe walk back Henrietta operator resident and in favor of individual. Independent restaurant operator. I think that might actually cover us doesn't have to be from Henrietta, not necessarily the threat of poaching on their own business, but probably still that local connection that we're talking about.
So we can just switch Henrietta to local?
No, I'm saying I would be willing to come down on Henrietta based, and then look at the next one. We're going to talk about independent.
Gotcha.
Being a little higher. I could see coming down to 5 here.
Some of the point, yeah. So Henrietta's lower, but that because it's essentially a combination of the two.
So you're thinking still have it at 5 or lower than 5?
I'd go to 5. Where I was at 10, I'd go to 5.
So originally we had 1 and 2 were each at 5. So for a total of an independent Henrietta operator would be 10%. A Monroe County operator would be 5. Independent operator would be 5%. Now, like I said, what we could do for the Henrietta based is if they're outside of the region, right? I assume we don't want an absentee operator.
on yours, Joe, just so I get it straight, how about, is it a resident too? I own a restaurant, but it's not Henrietta, but I live in Henrietta. Would
That counts to me as being Henrietta based.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
That's in the original definition we had.
Yeah.
That's a taxpayer. Takes
Right,
care
I
of both
just,
of them.
like I said, just want to make sure I was
Whether they
understanding.
own it or whether they live here, if they're paying taxes here, that should give them an extra.
Right.
It takes care of all the other.
Okay, so let's okay. So we're going to say +5 for being in Henrietta. Do we want to have a negative score for being? The other option we have is we can just reject any that are from outside, too far outside the region. That's the other option we have. I don't know that we're going to get any, but
I don't think we need it.
okay. Independent operator. Again, it was originally 5. Do we see a need to change that?
I'll leave it at 5. Now, I see here corporations, I see partnerships. What if they're LLC? What if they're a DBA, but they have a successful business?
That's fine. What
Okay.
we're talking about in when we talk about independent, so it could be, this could be their second or third, so like for instance, I would consider Jeremiah's to be independent, even though they have multiple locations.
Gotcha.
It's Jeremiah's. It's not, we're not talking about,
Shake Shack, or,
yeah,
right,
that's not what I was trying to
Just
think
near
of.
that, you know, like the distillery, I actually think they franchise them out.
Yeah, so so I guess we would basically say is non-franchised. That, I think that's a good thing to have as far as it being independent. Because the problem that you have with the franchise is now someone else is calling the shots on some of that stuff. In addition, I think part of this is also, trying to encourage small businesses.
so a business like Pellegrino's, what would that be considered?
I'm not familiar enough with Pellegrino's, sorry.
They're,
They're not franchise,
I think they're,
they have 2 locations that I know of.
they're owned by the distillery people.
Sam?
As far as I know, it used to be.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I just look at it, when I'm thinking of the non-independent, again, I'm not as concerned as, I'm not saying this has to be their only restaurant,
Right.
right? I'm saying that what we don't want is them having to answer to corporate. That's the non-independent part. So if they're a
Okay.
franchise, even if it's, franchise or licensed. And we're good at the 5%.
I am.
When we're all done, we're gonna put a motion. Now the last one, number 4, support in the town project.
I say 0, but that's just me. You guys can vote over me.
One, 2. I feel there should be something. That's, again, I understand there's a difference of opinion here. It's trying to
Yeah,
find a compromise number.
I'm comfortable with 2.
Mike,
I really see Rob's point. I mean, but obviously we got,
no, I understand. I'm just asking your
yeah,
opinion right now.
maybe,
Right.
That's right.
but I'm
No,
not,
I'm asking
no,
you.
I don't agree with it, with giving them points, but I can probably compromise it too. I mean, I can see,
Okay, so I'm gonna put the motion forward at 2%. And I'm gonna put each one of these forward separately, so that way you don't have to reject the whole thing, so. All right,
and once again, I asked this last week, I just want to make, so 2%, so if my rent is, so if I'm offering 5,000 a month for this place,
when I'm comparing it, then it would be at 2%, that would be what?
$100.
Right, $100. So my comparable rent would be 5,100.
Just want to make sure that's based on the rent amount, or
Correct.
is that also, wouldn't be based on?
Well, it's the total. So again, you subtract those, or you sum up those 4 numbers.
Okay.
And we can adjust what those are. The reason I did it that way is by adding the 3 years rent, I'm putting more of a bias towards it. Right. If I did 1 year's rent and 1 year up front, it biases it towards the upfront. By putting 3 years rent, it provides more operating revenue, which again, in the long term, that's what we're better off with, is more operating. So, okay. Fellow board members, now this one I'm actually this is in the resolution. So this case, I will be doing an amendment to the resolution. Fellow board members, I move that we amend resolution 16-312 such that the best value determination factor for number 1, the bidder is an independent restaurant operator, is 5%.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Varley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I move that we modify resolution 16-312-2025 such that the best value determination factor number 2, where the bidder is a Henrietta-based business, is set at 5%.
Second.
Michael.
Might beat him slightly. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Varley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I move that we modify resolution 16-312-2025 such that best determination factor number 3, the bidder has significant restaurant operation experience, is set at 10%. Need a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Varley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I move that we modify resolution 16-312-2025 such that best value determination factor number 4, the bidder has supported the town in the project design, is set at 2%.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Blanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Varley,
Nay.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. I will note, Becky, is that 11 o'clock? Is that the right time? I know we have another bid opening that day, although. We've done so many of these now, I'm losing track of. Again, I have a problem if they're. I see a bid opening at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, I thought we-
Didn't we do it later that day because of, it was better for you from a tax collection standpoint?
For September,
This is September 30th because,
we already had started farm operation.
yeah. The 30th is yes, the 30th is a ban shell, and I seem to remember when we had the discussion, we want it later in the day because you figure earlier in the day, there's gonna be chaos because it's one of the last days to pay taxes. Do you have any preference for a time? Okay. I won't make a motion to modify the time.
Oh, that's just fine. Computer is really slow, just leave it as it is.
Okey-doke. Any further discussion? And again, not taking comments from the public just because I'm afraid of if it's somebody who's potentially going to be bidding on the project. Obviously, any of the town staff is free to comment and or town attorney.
Can I just clarify, at the last, one of the ones we made do you want anything in the resolution about adding it to the special meeting on October 2nd? Or do you want to just add it to the special meeting on October 2nd?
Oh, because I called for that, if you want, I can add it. We're planning on doing it at that.
We're on the Veterans Memorial Park Ban Shell project. We didn't.
Right, because that
work-
actually started yes, we would be adding it to that. Do you think I should have be a further resolve for that, or because the meeting's already called?
I just mentioned it because you added it to the
Yeah.
resolution for the ban shell one, so I wasn't sure if you wanted to do this something similar.
So I was planning on doing it at that same meeting. The only reason I didn't add it to here is because we already called for that meeting to exist. So,
Yeah, it's only, when you do a special meeting, it's only for what you've advertised it as, so we have to so
okay, so
we're just,
have we advertised for that already?
we held it because we were
Suspicious that this was coming? Okay, so you want me to add, be it further resolved? That the selection of the winning bid. I'm gonna put if any. Will be made at the special town board meeting on this Thursday, October 2nd
This was at 4 p.m. I had in my calendar.
at 4 p.m. Yeah, because the other meeting starts at 4.
Right.
Okay. Fellow board members, I make a motion to modify resolution 16-312-2025 to add, be it further resolved that the selection of the winning bid, if any, will be made at the special town board meeting on Thursday, October 2nd at 4 p.m.
Second.
I think Rob got him that time. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Okay, so now we're gonna be voting on the resolution as amended. I know. So with all those changes, any further discussion on the resolution as amended? And that includes, again, the changes, because it's the attached bid package, those changes that we made to the bid packages are included in the change to the resolution.
Right here.
Okay. Then hearing no further discussion, please call the roll to approve or, well, just to approve resolution 16-312-2025 as amended multiple times. That's you.
Councilmember Page,
Aye.
Councilmember Belanca,
Aye.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
be seconded?
Aye, it was.
Oh, I didn't, okay. I didn't-
Sorry. And that concludes our business. I make a motion that we adjourn.
So moved.
How about that?
You got the second.
Hearing no objection.